What's going on, everybody? It's Dan again with another Moonshine talking. And for this one, we are going to talk about some questions I got asked recently. I know some of my favorite creators and channels that I watch. A bunch of them have been doing Q&As lately. I'm not trying to like jump on the bandwagon or rip them off or anything like that, but I wanted to do one. I thought it'd be kind of cool. So I'll go ahead and do one of those. But first, I wanted to show you some of what I've been spinning recently. First off, I got to be careful with this thing because it's old, but I got my Quiet Riot Metal Health on vinyl. This thing I got when I was a kid. A buddy of mine, he had a bunch of vinyls that he really wasn't a metal guy. So he's like, hey, bro, you want some of these? Just take them. I don't really have any use for them. And he gave me that one. He gave me OG pressing of Ultimate Sin by Ozzy. Iron Maiden. I think I got Alive After Death. A couple other things that are really cool. They're just cool things to have. I don't own a lot of records, but some of the ones I'm pretty happy that I have them because they're kind of cool. This one I got to be careful with because it's so old that when I took it out of the sleeve, the bottom part of the sleeve started coming undone. So I got to figure out like glue it or some shit. But yeah, that one I really like that one. Of course, Metal Health. That's the anthem of anthems. Come on, Feel the Noise is all right. Pink Black Cattle, Slick Cadillac. That's all right. The one I really like that I hadn't heard in a while was Run for Cover, and that one's just a tremendous rocking song. It'd be really cool to hear somebody cover that one, but that one probably of all of them, that's the sleeper on the album for me. That's the one I kept going back to and was like, yeah, man, that's good shit. Because I even a while ago I bought some Quiet Riot, a couple of the originals with Randy Rhoads in the band from Hells, and they're all right. They're just kind of like very generic 70s rock, almost kind of like Sweet if anyone's familiar with that band. And it's all right, but it's nothing to write home about. But it's kind of cool to have it in the collection and be able to go back to those and just having something with Randy Rhoads in the band. So that was cool. Also, I was recently a couple things that I got were Deceiver by Chemist. They're more of a melodic melodic doom band. This one's phenomenal. All the songs are really good. I'll probably go into more in-depth analysis somewhere down the road, but I really enjoyed that one. Another one I got was Hell Ripper, The Affairs of the Poisons. I know a lot of people are familiar with Hell Ripper, Black Thrash, one-man project from Scotland, I want to say. Scotland or Ireland, somewhere over there across the pond. And I know a lot of people last year, Warlock Scrim and Withered Hags was on their top 2023. I really wasn't a huge fan of that one, but I did enjoy this one. I also got their debut, Coagulating Darkness, so check that out soon. But I really enjoyed that one. Everything I heard on it was really good. Uh, the Convent Wall. What's the name of the song? Beyond the Convent Walls. That's a really good one, right off the top of my head. And the affairs of the title track, The Affairs of the Poison. That one's a really good one. Yeah, that's a cool one. If you haven't heard that one, check it out. If you're into black and thrash, speed stuff, kind of like Midnight, Sadistic Force, probably Toxic Holocaust, stuff like that. That's one I check out as well. And then I finally got around to spinning. Oh, look at that guy in the background. But I got to spinning Immortal, the Northern. I'm gonna say this wrong. Upir's Death, which was their original form as a death metal band. It was cool. It's really raw. It's aggressive, and it, it's good. It's a cool thing to hear. It wasn't my favorite, but it is cool to hear the demos and hear how they eventually transitioned into the sound that Immortal eventually took on and how they kind of evolved into what eventually became the Immortal that everybody's familiar with. I also just I was spinning that at Bat that I got a while ago. Uh, his debut, I want to say it was for Seasons of Mist, and that one was tremendous. I really liked that one. But yeah, that was that. So that's some of the stuff I was spinning. So anyhow, without any further ado and too much babbling, let's get into the questions. Um, Warning, a lot of these are wrestling related. I know some people who watch my channel, they don't really give a crap about the wrestling stuff, which is cool, so if you want to skip out, I get it. But one of the questions was from somebody who's watching one of my videos, so I don't remember the dude's name. I'm presuming it's a dude. The other one was from Vincent Crowley. Everybody knows who Vincent is. And the third one was from Scott from No Solution. That's his channel. Check it out. It's fun. It's a cool channel. He just did a thing with where he did a video about Shannon Tweed and a couple other things. I he amuses me, and not like he's a clown or anything like that, but I enjoy some of his takes on stuff. I find his opinions pretty good. I tend to agree with him. Plus, he's into wrestling. He's asked me some wrestling stuff and recently, and so I just figured I'd answer it. So I'll start with. I'll try not to go too long with all this. I've already been babbling for a minute here, but the first one we'll say is the guy whose name I can't remember who commented on my video. That was the four-way tag with John Tenna, Prince Iake, and his partner, my partner, and the guys, the Market Crashers. Uh, so he had asked me at one point in the match. There was kind of like a weird thing that happened later in the match when I was in the ring with Iake. And basically, the story behind it was I was going to do a whole one of those commentary track videos that I was doing, but I don't know. It just we'll see. I might do it again, but basically, the story is that that was the most controversial match I've ever been involved with. Basically, because at a certain point in the match was not falling apart in the traditional sense of how matches fall apart in a pro wrestling ring, but it was not very well orchestrated. We didn't really have a plan going into it. And when you have that many people in a match and you don't have a plan, things get chaotic very easily. They turn into messes, they turn into free for alls, and there's no structure, there's no format, there's no psychology to it. It's just every man for himself, or in this case, every team for themselves. Any semblance of order or anything that makes sense just flies right out the window. And that's kind of what happened. And then at some point in the match, IAK was getting frustrated with either all of us or the match itself. He got in the ring with me, gave me what's called a drop toe hold. I took a face plant. He starts whipping cross faces at me. And later on after the match, he told me that he thought I was covering up or bitching up, I think was the phrase that he used. And I wasn't. You can clearly see on the video that I wasn't doing that. He was just throwing a ton at me. And I wasn't thinking too much of it, but what I was thinking was that, okay, we're going to do like actual wrestling type stuff. He's using cross faces, so that's more like amateur stuff. Let's do more like a folk style and kind of incorporate something different into the match. So I sat out, turned into him, went for a single leg. I think I ended up trying to. He wasn't cooperating, so I think I went for a double. He still wasn't cooperating, and one thing led to another, and he flipped me onto my back, got top control, put me in a guillotine. Which, if any of you don't know what a guillotine is, you basically put a front face lock, the head's here, and you start cinching back, and it's a submission hold. If you watch any UFC or MMA, or have done any of it, you're familiar with a guillotine choke. And yeah, that's what he put me in. I kind of had to like give him the Iggy a little bit to lighten up because that wasn't the finish. And in the match, my partner and I were set to go over, so it's not like I couldn't really like submit because that would have screwed up the finish. And then John Tenta, who was the promoter, would have been even more pissed than he ended up being at us. Which, spoiler alert, that's what ended up happening. We ended up losing our jobs that night. So anyhow, it was a whole thing. A lot of people remember me for that, and it took a lot of the wind out of my sails. I had actually had another match with Ayakea previously, and it didn't go well. So I think he kind of he had not so much a grudge against me, but he'd had a sour taste in his mouth about working with me. And then we had another match after that with tennis promotion where we went way over our time when we were supposed to be the openers. We were supposed to do like they gave us 10 minutes. We probably should have gone six, and we ended up going 20. Pissed off a lot of people, most notably Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. And there was other big name talent on the show. John Tenna's the promoter. So they were all kind of annoyed at us anyway. So leading into the four-way match, the idea was they were going to get me and my partner in the ring, kind of in a working fashion, teach us a lesson, and that was the idea behind it. And then it just went off the rails. We got to the back. IAK starts screaming at me and accusing me of shooting on him, which one I didn't do. Secondly, I'm not stupid enough to do because he's a very he, he's a shooter. He's very well versed in submission style. He was a very skilled amateur in Florida when he was in high school. So he was not somebody, and not to use stereotypes, but Samoan people are just tough people, and you don't really want to mess with them, especially if they're trained and they're killers to begin with. You just don't want to mess with people like that. So I wouldn't have done it based on that, but more so because he was a veteran and I respect the veterans. I always respected the veterans. I really, to this day, I would say on a stack of holy and unholy Bibles that I was not shooting on him. But it just turned into a whole thing. IAK was pissed at us. We ended up losing our jobs and never got to work there again, which is fine. It happens. But it kind of just stuck with me for a while because a lot of people who were familiar with the situation, for years, they remembered me for that. And some people never let me forget it. And I've never told my story as far as my side of the story of how things went that day. So that's that. So that's what happened. So if you're watching, you who commented about it, if you're curious what happened, that's what happened. So hopefully that answered your question. Then I'll dovetail into Vincent's question. Vincent had asked me if I had any interest in training anybody, or was I still involved in the business. So give me a second. Basically, in 2013, I had my last match, December 1st, 2013. I had a match. I hadn't worked in a couple of years just because at the time I basically put all my eggs into one basket as far as wrestling went. I would work with primarily one company. When the one company folded, I didn't really have a lot of places to work, and wrestling is a very clicky business. So if you're not in with certain cliques, you don't get work with certain places. And that was kind of the situation that I was in. I was pretty comfortable and happy just working with the one company and sometimes branching out with stuff that they were affiliated with. So I would get my work, but it was relegated to this company and some of their affiliates. So when they folded and some of the other companies weren't around, the work dried up for me. As far as wrestling went, I always had a job the whole time, I was always employed with a full time job. I still am to this day, have the same job. But I took a couple of years off, half voluntarily, half not. And I started getting the itch again. I moved into my buddy Mike's house, and he was wrestling. He came back from Texas, was working the Indies in Florida again. I started getting the itch a little bit to work again. Started training a little bit. Got an offer to do a match. Went to go do the match. The match was a total disaster. But the most noteworthy thing about it was towards the end of the match. The finish was I was supposed to take a Michinoku driver. If you're not familiar with what a Michinoku driver is, it's a Japanese move and it's a variant of a body slam, but you land a little bit more high and tight on the neck and shoulders. And basically, I'll try to show it to you. Like you take, like a normal body slam is here, you go, whoop, pick the guy up, slam him, flat back him, and that's a body slam. With a Michinoku driver, you take the guy for the slam and you kind of drive him down a little bit and you sit out with it and you'll land a little bit higher and tighter. You can see that on the shoulders and neck area. Well, anyhow, short story long, we're doing the match. The match is falling apart. We're both gassing. Go up for the Michinoku driver. I land at a very high angle, and upon impact, all I hear is, and then a lot of pain came after. And we finished the match 1, 2, 3. Go to the back and put some ice on it because it was hurting almost instantly. And then I walked around for like 3 days from that Sunday till that Thursday where I finally got checked out. And turned out I had a stress fracture in my T7 vertebrae. That was what the crack was. That was that popping, cracking noise. It was my T7 vertebrae fracturing. So had to stay in a brace for 3 months. That sucked. Then, in the process of them evaluating me through the healing process, they noticed that my neck was jacked up. So they're like, "You got to get your neck fixed. Your neck's you got disc bulging. They're pressing at your spinal cord." I was like, "Yeah, but they've been like that for years. I'm not worrying about it. They're not bothering me right now." So, all right, whatever. I was like, "Well, let's just focus on this first." So finally, go through the healing process, rehab, get out of the brace, go to rehab, finally started working out again. And then one day, my arms just started going numb. Long story short on that, I had to get C6 and 7 fusion surgery done on my neck. And that pretty much was the end of wrestling for me because doctors don't like when you screw with their work. And even though a lot of guys in WWE and some of the larger companies would have neck surgeries done, I was an indie guy and not a very high up on the food chain one. So it really isn't something that, like, I wasn't a commodity or an investment to a major wrestling company. So even though I got, neck surgery is neck surgery, but they weren't really catering it towards me getting back into the ring. They were just catering it towards, okay, you can continue to work out like physically, do workouts and stuff like that. But as far as you bumping around a ring, that's not what we're doing. We're just setting you up so you can move from point A to point B at this point and not be in an accident and then wind up a paraplegic. Is basically the idea behind it. So, other than trying a couple of things here and there, I did a show where I refereed the entire show one time, which was a fun time. It's a story for another time. Tried to pitch being a manager, tried to pitch being a color commentator, tried to pitch doing a variety of things, becoming a coach at a school. But like I say, wrestling's kind of clicky. And if you're not in the clique, you're out of the clique. And I really wasn't in the cliques of the places where I was pitching the ideas to. So nothing ever materialized. So I pretty much divested myself from pro wrestling. Haven't really been involved in it. Uh, I've got maybe one buddy, my buddy Brian Brock. Occasionally he'll ask me questions or ask me stuff about wrestling or shoot the shit about wrestling, and he's about the only guy that listens to me. But by and large, I'm really not involved in wrestling at all. And since I was such a low, you know, since I was so low on the totem pole of wrestling, guys wouldn't listen to me anyway. Like half these guys, they work for these major companies with big names like Arn Anderson and Dean and Jericho and all these other people, and they don't listen to them. So why would they listen to me? So yeah, pretty much long story short, the answer is no, I don't do anything with wrestling. It would have been nice at one point, but at this point, nah, pretty much just I'll comment on it. I'll show my matches on here and talk about stuff that interests me, wrestling related. But beyond that, no, I don't really do anything with wrestling anymore. So that's that. And then Scott from No Solution asked me what I thought of AEW. AEW is a company that they were set up in 2019. It's owned and operated by Tony Khan. His father owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very wealthy family. Basically, he is what I would refer to as an overzealous fan who has turned into a financier. And I think a lot of the boys noticed that and they picked up on it. And he's basically the long and short of what I think about AEW is that they had potential, had being the operative word. They squandered a lot of their potential. They squandered a lot of their goodwill. They they have a lot of talented guys there who they've woefully underutilized. They have not built any of their own stars. They're relying on people coming from WWE, which according to their modus operandi when they first opened was supposed to be against the spirit of what they were doing, even though we will forget about the fact that Cody Rhodes was part of the company from its outset, which, in my opinion, was always a ploy for him to go back to WWE and have his WrestleMania moment, which is playing out right now. So while I never was online at that time to comment on that, that was pretty much my opinion at the time. I've been proven right, so yay me. But anyhow, but yeah, they squandered a lot of any potential that they had to be a serious number two promotion in the country and in the world. They make a lot of dumb decisions. They do a lot of bad booking, a lot of For example, I'll just give a couple examples. They got a guy there. His name is Wardlow, and he's a huge guy. He's a good looking guy. He he's very athletic, very talented. He's somebody that you could build a company around. But instead, they build the company around this guy, Orange Cassidy, he's probably like 5'8", 5'9", 170 pounds, wrestles in fake jeans and a jean jacket. He's supposed to be doing a slacker gimmick. I don't know what the at one point he was working with Jericho and they had what they called a mimosa match where the loser had to get dunked in a pool of mimosa, which is stupid. But Jericho's a whole other thing as far as that goes. But that's kind of like you could extrapolate that to multiple other talent within the company, and that's pretty much the idea is that they put the focus of the program on the wrong people. And then you've got guys sitting there waiting in the wings, probably sitting in catering or not coming to the shows at all, just getting paid to sit at home and do nothing because they get guaranteed contracts. And they have so many guys there that they could do stuff with, who they could have built a promotion around and develop talent to lead them into the next few years, but they just haven't done it. They just squandered a lot of talent. Now they're going to the New Japan. Well, I'm not really a big Japanese wrestling guy as far as particularly modern day stuff. I don't really watch a lot of the modern day stuff. So some of the guys they have there currently, they just don't do it for me. They don't interest me. Don't hold my interest. So by and large, that's what I think of AEW. I just think it's a company that they could have, but they didn't. And I could probably go on and on and on for hours about it, but I am not going to. So yeah, that's for Scott. I hope that kind of answers your question. It didn't go into the great, long, exasperated depth that I would usually go into a question, particularly relating to wrestling. But that's kind of the idea of what I think of AEW. That pretty much Vincent's question will bookend my start in wrestling towards my end of wrestling. So you kind of have a general idea. Somewhere in the middle is the rest of the story, which I'm sure will get told at some point in my life. And yeah, and that's pretty much that. So if anybody ever in the future has any questions you want to ask me about wrestling, metal, horror movies, what I do in my downtime, I don't know, as long as it's not freaky or disgusting, then feel free to shoot a question in the comments, and yeah, I'll answer them as best I can. I like communicating with people. I like talking about stuff that I'm interested in. That's why I enjoy doing this sort of format. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I've already gone well over the time I wanted to, but I'm close enough to where I'm not completely babbling and hopefully not boring anybody to tears. I know I have a face for radio and a voice for silent movies, but regardless, I am just babbling at this point. So as always, I appreciate everybody watching this. Feel free to share it. Most of you already subscribe and possibly give a like, comment, or whatever the deal. All that crap that they tell you to do that's supposed to grow channels and all that. But yeah, that's that. So for now, stay sick, stay heavy, stay brutal. Upon impact, always tuck your chin and don't forget to breathe. I will catch you on the next one. I got a bunch more comment. I'll spit that out properly eventually. I got a bunch more content coming out pretty soon. Hopefully you'll enjoy it, and I will catch you on the next one. Later.